Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Tonight we have former member of, or still member of Red Pill Religion, Andrew Stratelates.
And of course, this is me, Mr. Brass, and this is gonna be an interesting show. We got the gang back together partly. How are you doing, my good friend? Hello, Commander Andrew.
I'm
He's on.
doing well.
Okay.
The Red Pill Religion project is on sort of hiatus right now. John Baptiste is in charge of it, and I'm sort of retired from it too. So yeah, this is definitely sort of a little bit of a reunion. So thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah,
How long has it
I
been?
mean, we had John Baptiste on a while back too, and we did a sort of reunion with him. So we've been wanting to get you on to do one with you, just to keep in touch.
Yeah, I think it's been at least a year. I think that the last time we were on a stream together was sometime in 2019, I think.
I think so. That sounds about right. So, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, in the online world, I've been mostly Twittering, developing more philosophical and political thought. I've been on an occasional stream and debate. I had one or two on modern day debate, but mostly just Twitter for me.
Yeah. Did you get? I forget. Did you get to debate T Jump?
I did not. It turned out to be a conflict with some other obligations I had for my professional life. But,
Uh, well, I can spoil it for you. He would have said whatever you posit for God, he can explain it with naturalistic pantheism.
well, but being a pantheist isn't being a new atheist. And the other issue is those levels of worldviews are in some sense complete. So anything that he posited, I could explain through classical theism or Christian theism as well. And you know, I'd be happy to reach that level of being sort of on the same epistemic ground, right? One of my frustrations with the new atheism and some of the rhetoric that we get from Dawkins and these YouTube atheists is the claim that atheism is the sort of the epistemic or philosophical high ground, and that the theists have to work uphill or something. But once you have a system that can explain everything, well, then you can sort of compare them to systems that multiple systems that explain everything.
So, for the audience that may or may not know you, um, tell them what got you into joining Red Pill Religion, and for that matter, just getting involved in the whole new atheist debate.
Yeah, so a long time ago, I was part of a religious chat room, and they let everyone in, and I was explaining to this teenage woman of something about Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac and some of the details with that. And this atheist basically butted into the conversation and was really obnoxious and trying to advocate for her to lose her belief in God and in religion in general. And that sort of switched my perspective on things. And as I continued on in sort of my online life, I noticed that this was more and more the typical case, right? That people that were religious or spiritual or theistic weren't left alone. And that's when I joined with some like-minded folks into the Escaping Atheism project, because we all felt that this was a significant problem of the culture at the time.
Yeah, I remember that we had been. Well, I mean, I remember when I got on, it was sort of interesting to see the diverse set of characters we could get on the show. I remember it was sort of funny how we could pretty much get everyone in there that has a personally like a personal avatar of some Christian figure in there, and then you just had me and Carlos here who did it, and it was sort of funny how we just sort of stood out with that.
Yeah, especially with the Escaping Atheism project and Red Pill Religion, the aim was to make uh, a place to discuss, or where people that were theistic in a general sense, or even non-religious, were welcome. And the real point was to push back against this sort of haughty, arrogant materialism or atheism, right? Rather than this sort of discourse that is really a deep part of at least the modern tradition of America and European thought.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I remember what's funny is you had a sort of background where you'll get an atheist online that's just saying a bunch of derogatory things at you, and you just basically tell them, "I agree with you. I am those things."
Yeah, that's one of my the more amusing ones is that they'll accuse me. There are these rhetorical flourishes that were really popular at one time and still are sometimes. Of you know, in a Christian atheist debate, the atheist will call the Christian like a hypocrite or a coward or a sinner or all these things that are really very general accusations. And the funny thing is they're so general they're actually true. And one of my strategies is to just agree with people when they accuse me of something that is in fact truly wrong about me, right? So if they say that I'm a coward, I'll agree with them because yes, I am a coward, or I'm a bad man, yes. Because from some standards, I am a coward and a bad man, and it's fine for people to say that to me. I mean, it's not going to
Like
affect me. Go ahead, Carlos.
sort of like I am, so are you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I've always found that sort of a good, funny strategy because they don't really see that coming. They what they usually do is they want you to be on the defensive and try to defend yourself, but what you're doing is you're just granting them it full
Yeah,
sail.
yeah, because a lot of them get off on it. But they'll be like if without the this higher power or the Bible didn't tell you to kill people, would you start? Would you start doing it? Would you start murdering people? Would you start raping people? And we would just reply like, yes, yes, I would.
Yeah, I remember I actually did a video on that with
Jack,
Jacqueline Glenn
yeah, fucking idiot.
where she had said like she was responding to a conservative Jewish political commentator named Dennis Prager,
Yeah.
and she had said, "So are you seriously saying that if you didn't believe in God, you would go around murdering and raping people?" And then I just replied, "Yes, yes, I would." You say that, and you can just see the looks on their face when you say that.
Yeah, and like when they bring up the rape verses the rape verse in Deuteronomy, it can be read that way. Like or numbers or whatever, and then we'll respond like, "Well, it's not rape if she likes it."
Yeah, you know, I've always said a good
Because
strategy
not
is
gonna,
to also find how they morally can't object to it themselves.
yeah, because they're not going to understand the nuance of the situation, so why even bother?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's sort of fascinating, right? That and I guess I've had my own existential journey as agnostic, and they don't seem to realize what like Friedrich Nietzsche did, and Camus, and these other old atheists, that um, if there isn't a final moral authority that is transcendent of humans, then the only question is basically what can you get away with, right?
yeah, pretty much. And politicians seem to know that very well.
Yeah, exactly. We actually see a lot of this with politicians and people that have power, right? That the only limit they have is basically what they can get away with.
Mhm. So, what got you into Anglicanism?
Yeah, so Anglicanism for me was really interesting because it was very intellectually rigorous, but it also was careful not to define things more than we're able to. And that's what really appealed to me in the tradition. I really love liturgy as well, and beautiful churches and that sort of things. But those are all aesthetics. And so I guess the way to put it is that it fulfilled not only my spiritual needs, but my intellectual and aesthetic needs as well.
And you also just loved King Henry VIII.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, and you just really loved King Henry VIII.
He's a mixed character. I am really ambivalent about Henry VIII personally. James the First, and actually Charles and Elizabeth the First, I think are a much less. I feel much less ambivalent about.
Which Charles, the fifth?
King Charles the First, the martyr.
Oh, them.
Yeah.
Because there's so many Charles, there's so many Louis, there's so many Henrys.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, like if you want to see that, think about how many historical characters have been called the Great.
Yeah,
Um,
only a few of them deserve that title.
Alexander the Great,
Yep.
Catherine the Great. Trying to think of another one.
Louis XIV the Great, the
Yeah,
Constantine the Great, Theodosius the Great.
yeah, Mr. Brass the Great. Um, you know, I've always that's basically I've found that to be sort of a funny thing about how those sort of names just come about. And so I was thinking, um, I was trying to think, in terms of your politics, haven't you in your past said that you have a heart for the monarchy?
Yeah, I'm really um, sympathetic to more monarchical systems. I think that the best thing for America would be a return to sort of the aristocratic republicanism we had with a strong president. Um, I think that's the best cultural fit. But I'm sympathetic to alternative forms of government like monarchy or serene republics and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, just think about this on the bright side with with a king. A bad president worries about his job. A bad king worries about his life.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the key thing that appeals to me about monarchy is it really emphasizes accountability, and accountability seems to be what's lacking in our current system, right?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I've always pointed out that at least in our, I mean, I'm not against democracy per se. At least, I'm a fan of what they call a meritocratic democracy, or a democracy that's based on merit. Um, I'm not against that sort of thing, but I would say that our current system is only, I would say, slightly better than a straight up monarchy, like a total monarchy, not like a constitutional monarchy.
Do you think our current system is slightly better than an absolute monarchy?
Yeah,
Uh, in what sense?
slightly better in the sense that, I mean, at the very least, with an absolute monarchy, with an absolute monarchy, there is a sort of idea that you expect them to be totalitarians, where at least, I mean, it's not something you expect in our current system, but you just still get it.
Yeah, I guess the key question, and it's hard to look for modern analogs, but do we need more centralization of power or less?
Mm-hmm.
And so far, the claim for the past over 200 years in America is the more diffused responsibility is, the better. The concern I have in America and the West is that is still the rhetoric and the propaganda, but we actually have a functional oligarchy, right? That we have a rule of a smaller
Mm-hmm.
group of people, and in our current system, they are sort of hidden from their responsibility, and that's the key issue, and I think that's the cause of the majority of the dysfunction, is that you know
Well,
they don't have that accountability.
Yeah, we
And
definitely don't live in a democracy or republic. It's pretty much an oligarchy, very much, because most of the population don't want to live under these woke totalitarianism.
yeah. Well, I mean, you basically, I've always said we have a funny enough. We have a battle between two religions. One, fundamentalist Christianity on the evangelical side, and two, wokeism.
Which has seeped into the other half of the evangelical church.
Yeah, which, you know, I've always found it funny with atheists that they'll say, we don't want to live in a theocracy. I said, you're going to live in a theocracy one way or the other. The only thing is, it's just which religion do you want to be theocratic? Would you want to be a woke theocracy, or do you want it to be a conservative theocracy? You don't have the choice in which to not be in the theocracy. You just have a choice which version of it you want.
yeah, and to put it in slightly different words, um, humans are always religious creatures, and the question is, what religion will they have, both individually and as a society?
And then you see this, like people think we've advanced so much that we're better than these other, like fascist and communist societies in the 20th century. But like they had cults of personality, but we also have some of our own. Like they've had it with Hitler, Stalin, Mao, um, uh,
Whole pot.
yeah, and Saddam, Allende, Mobutu, and all them. Like we all, but over here we have it with Reagan, Obama, and Trump, and then with the woke side we have those fucking idiots like AOC and Ilhan Omar and the rest of the
The
squad.
squad.
Yeah, the idiot squad.
Yeah. Um, which, I found it funny is like, people go after Ilhan Omar because they say that she married her brother or something like that. And they'll say she should be disqualified from office from marrying her brother. And I said, if we disqualified every politician that did it, that married one of their family members, we'd have no politicians in Alabama.
Arizona. That was hilarious when they tried to like we'll expel Marjorie Taylor Greene if you expose Ilhan Omar.
Mm-hmm.
No, because she's a crazy Q conspiracy QAnon wacko.
Yeah,
Green.
I remember. Um, oh yeah. Well, since this is obviously going to come up, what was your thoughts, Commander Andrew, on the the Capitol Hill riots?
Yeah, basically, my perception is that the Trump supporters at what started out as a protest felt like they could play by the same rules as the progressive protests that they had seen, right? Be that the Kavanaugh hearing, be that the BLM riots, and so on. And they thought that they could take the same type of approach as their political opponents. But basically, what happened is no, you can't. And the 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 frustrating part is that
The double
if
standards.
yeah, it's a double standard, right? And we have to bear witness to that. And then the other amusing thing is if Trump was organized enough to like order them to riot, he wouldn't have to have made them riot. He could have just like ordered them to engage in like procedural shenanigans to screw all the people in Congress who weren't going along with him, right? And that's the thing is if if things were organized enough to attempt a violent coup, they wouldn't have to use a violent coup because they'd be so well organized.
Then you get AOC playing on her followers' emotions like that because we know she's acting. Everybody with common sense knows she's acting, but like they bought that even though she wasn't anywhere near the building. Like she was like around the block or something across the street, wherever. But anyway, she just played on it like you almost had me murdered, so you can sit this one out. And then she gave a sob story about like I was a sexual assault victim, and then she tried comparing it to that, even though this is the first time we heard about that story. But then you also have Rashida Tlaib like breaking down and crying on there, showing such shameful weakness for such a woman, for such a person in powerful position. It's just an embarrassment.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Is that we don't have politicians that act with the dignity and gravitas anymore, and we are starting to see with AOC's generation basically these ascended like drama kids who are in politics now, right? And they're using the same emotive rhetorical devices, um, and which is I guess human nature. But it's really frustrating because they're sacrificing the dignity of the office to do it.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny about AOC is the fact that she, I mean, I think what's just silly about her is that she obviously has the IQ of a turnip, and that's being generous. And you know, she's she's obviously lying about being in actual danger. Like the, I mean, if the Capitol, I mean, if those riots, you know, I mean, I will say this about the riots in general is that, I give credit where credit's due. Is like they had a problem with the government and they took it to the source. Um, you know, that's a lot better than I've seen the BLM activists do, where they have a problem with the government, and the police in specific, and they just burn down random businesses around them. That just, I mean, I can at least give the Trump supporters credit for they realized who their enemy was and took it to the source.
That's not to downplay the damage done to the Capitol. That's just But
Well,
anyway,
yeah, it's not. It's it wasn't right that they did that. But I'm just saying is that at the very least they were somewhat more coherent because they knew who their enemy was.
yeah, but meanwhile, Antifa's still burning shit down in Portland and Seattle.
Yeah, and actually, I have a slightly different take than you, Mr. Brass. I don't think AOC is stupid. I just think that all of her intellectual effort is aimed at doing two things: gaining power and using power against her enemies. And that's the fundamental issue with a lot of these woke people, is they found a way to justify the use of power against their enemies that makes them feel moral and satisfied. Um,
Well, apparently she is kind of stupid in ways because since she doesn't know what a garbage disposal is and think that cow farts are affecting the climate and thinks the world's going to end in 10 years if we don't do something about this Green New Deal and all that. She's the kind of person who would accidentally lock herself in her car with the windows up.
Well, that's what you really get when you elect creepy, sleepy Beijing Biden.
But she also does know how to play on her followers' emotions because her followers aren't that bright to begin with. But she knows how to do it.
Well, to me, she's smart enough in the sense that she knows that men like she knows how to power. She knows we live in a gynocentric culture, and she knows that if she says she was harmed in any way, that there's going to be a bunch of white knights that come to her aid and say, "My lady."
Yeah, even when she was she's trying to wanted people to believe that she was people were taking a picture of her in front of the border in front of these cages even though it was an empty parking lot.
Yeah,
They're
it's really stupid.
they just
Uh,
forgot about that and they're trying to forget the fact that she blatantly lied about being in the building. Try to spin the story, but anyway.
so yeah, so what do you make of the the current president, creepy, sleepy Beijing Biden, Commander Andrew?
well, so far it seems like basically business back to usual for sort of the progressive consensus with a Clintonista or someone from the more center left part of the Democratic Party in charge. Um,
Kind of like Obama 2.0 without the hero worship.
yeah, basically. Um, and and I get the sense that Obama was pushing more for far left stuff, while Biden is more just acquiescing to it. Right? He's not going to moderate it, but he's not going to push it for it himself.
Like everybody knows he's a puppet. He's just doing what probably what Kamala's telling him to do, or Kamala.
Well,
Or even what Jill is saying. Yeah, he seems a lot less sharp than he used to be, but I get the feeling that on certain things he still has the reins, but I don't think he has everything.
but don't you know, man? He's a devout Catholic.
I'm probably, I can almost guarantee you that I'm more compliant with Roman Catholic teaching than he is. And I don't believe that popes actually exist as Roman Catholics define it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, what's
but
funny is
don't
that
yeah, but don't you know that poor kids are just as capable as white kids?
yeah, I mean,
Because everybody knows I like kids more than people.
hmm, you know, I've always found it funny. It's like everyone's just sort of waiting till creepy, sleepy Beijing Biden goes has his stroke and dies or something, and then we get
You
President
can't say that.
Obama.
Can't say that because the demonetization overlords.
Well,
I'm already demonetized, but anyway.
I mean, people are just waiting for Biden to either Biden to die from old age or for him to be rendered incapable of running the country, and then we get the first ever female president,
He's already
Kamala
he's
Harris.
already incapable of ruling the country. He already
Well,
has signed all these executive orders that all these far left executive orders.
I know it really is saying something.
Like
So
I really wanted to like the guy, but it just that was just discussing what he said yesterday about the downplaying the genocide that's happening front of our eyes. That China just has different cultural norms.
Did he actually? Wow,
Yeah.
that's yeah, and well, it's double standards again, right?
Yep.
That yeah,
well, I mean, to be quite frank, Commander Andrew, I mean, I've sort of learned this myself is that calling the left hypocrites is not really doing much of anything because the thing about the left is that they're predominantly consequentialist.
yeah.
It's their dominant moral philosophy, and their basic line of moral reasoning is, having double standards, behaving immorally, taking power in most egregious ways possible, and doing whatever it takes is fine, as long as it gets you to your desired end.
Yeah. If the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have standards at all.
And that's a very good point, right? That uh, claims of hypocrisy are only really effective against people that have a moral system that is adjacent to Christianity. Um,
That does seem to be why they pander to Islam. They seem to love Islam and they love China also. They seem to like and kowtow to China, even though they're overtly racist towards black people than over here.
yeah, Islam is really interesting because it's almost as though leftists can't detect Islam because they can't discern like religious systems correctly.
Yeah, because Islam literally stands for everything that they're against.
Yeah. Um,
What's funny is that, a big reason. I mean, have you ever guys watched the animated Disney show called Frozen?
Oh
yes.
God.
Um, well, they were going to make Elsa a lesbian, but they can't do. They realized they couldn't do that because then China wouldn't pay for them.
That is
Yeah,
impressive.
and that's the reason they made Boyega less black in the posters for Star Wars.
Yes.
They don't want to lose that sweet, sweet Chinese money.
Yeah, and that's what it appears to be, right? Is that they want Chinese money and manufacturing capability, or they want Chinese money and Chinese cheap industry. Um,
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, but hey, don't you know that the Chinese government is just, you know, it's far more capitalistic now than it's ever been before.
yes, and that's the sort of interesting thing, right? Is that it's capitalistic in the sense of having a mixed economy. It's not really a free market. There are lots of nepotism and handouts and government contracts, but they're allowing foreign investment in things while retaining all the mechanisms necessary to have a totalitarian state.
And here's another double standard on the Gina Carano situation. You've probably heard all throughout this week. There's they tried canceling her, but it backfired, thankfully. And the double standard with Pedro Pascal, they didn't go after him. They just wanted to get rid of her because she's a conservative, and he's super woke, like pronouns in the bio, everything. Like he called half the country Nazis, because they support Trump. But she compared what conservatives are going through now, being compared to what Jews were going through before the Holocaust happened, because they like to portray her as anti-Semitic by saying that she's comparing conservatives to what the Jews were going through during the Holocaust, not before it, which is what she was actually implying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. Let's assume she actually does the worst possible thing, right? Which is using a bad analogy with the Holocaust to explain something going on right now. Using a bad analogy shouldn't be a fireable offense, right? Um, and if you think about it carefully, it's not a perfect analogy, but it's not bad. It's okay to good, I'd say,
No,
right?
they just want an excuse to get rid of her because they've been after her for some time.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think it was all pretext. They wanted to fire her, but they didn't have a good excuse. And
Even though she got uncanceled and hired by a Jewish guy.
yeah, Ben Shapiro.
I love how he gets under the left skin. He just does it so effortlessly, and it just gives him more energy the more they hate him.
Yeah, you know, Ben Shapiro is, the left drinks so much haterade with Ben Shapiro that they have stocks in it.
These people at Politico just have spaz attacks, just trying to get rid of him, and then a couple weeks later they still brought it up again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I was also wondering, Commander Andrew Stratelates, what's your take on the power outage that going on in Texas?
So my first take usually in significant power issues in the United States is our power infrastructure in is not where it needs to be for it to be resilient in emergencies, right? And I think that explains probably 80% of it. And then the remaining 20% is when you use certain types of renewable energy like solar and wind. The issue is they have variability in the power that they give, and so you need to invest in having capacity that you can turn on quickly, usually with natural gas or flywheels or stuff to mitigate that. And basically, hopefully, this is just going to be a cheap lesson to the entire continent that it's important to have your infrastructure ready to handle weather emergencies and to build in some redundancy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. You
Anyway,
know,
on to something important. Why do you name yourself after Stratelates? People might assume that you're a Catholic or Orthodox by having a patron saint.
Sure, yeah. So Andrew Stratelates was a soldier Christian, and he was famous for um, uh, battling and winning against hordes of non-believers and anti-Christian pagans wearing no armor. And so he was a good analogy for the type of apologetics that I was engaging in. And I think he needs a bit more fame, and I don't think that I should take the credit. And even though he's not a philosopher, I don't think that I do anything that he would be a disservice to him when I do well. So that's
And also, you're not Syrian.
correct. I am not Syrian. I am American.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I always thought that Andrew Stratelates, the soldier, was actually a pretty interesting figure. You know, I also, I looked briefly up at him when I was going over some, some other famous Christians, and especially like Christian martyrs. Um, you know, like my, last night I actually had a discussion about theology, and I actually did give a good rundown, I think, of Christian history, which, coming from a non-believer slash heathen like myself, I think I surprised many of the audience members with my knowledge on that subject. Um, you know, so anyway, let me think. Hmm. Oh yeah. So, what was your opinion of Donald Trump's 4 years? Do you have any hopes of him running again in another 4 years? Hello?
Andrew?
It would help if I knew how to unmute myself.
Ah.
Um, yeah, I'd say it was a mixed bag. There was a lot that he did. He seemed to attempt to keep a lot of his promises. He did build the border wall. He was very entertaining as well. But I feel like it was a great example of the limits of capability of what the president's actually able to do. Right? Is that the president actually isn't the CEO of the American government. His role is more limited than that, and any movement that believes that the direction that the country is going politically is incorrect is going to have to keep that in mind. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to run again in 4 years. I'm not even sure if he's going to be able to create a media alternative media centered on sort of dissidents, or Trumpism or populism or however you want to put it. But I think it's sort of interesting that the Republican Party, which used to be the more elitist party, actually had a successful bid and run by an outsider who was not part of the political machine. Um, that I think is really interesting, just from a sociological perspective.
Oh, things are
Well, I
looking
mean,
tough.
let's think about it this way. We went from the first dark-skinned president to the first orange president.
And to the first president with full-blown dementia.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much think that we probably need to think about having an age limit in the United States when it comes to who can be president.
Oh yeah, if DeSantis runs, we'll have the first Latino president, and if we have Tulsi Gabbard, we'll have the first Babe president.
Yeah. Um, did you guys hear that Candace Owens is thinking about running for president in 2024?
Not happening. Not gonna happen.
You know who I think she should have as her vice president running mate?
Not Shapiro.
No, Dan Crenshaw.
Oh, why him?
You know, the eye patch guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Could could you absolutely imagine Kamala and Biden trying to say something bad about a black woman and a guy with an eye patch?
Well, they don't care. They say bad shit about her all the time. The left does.
Well, no, I mean,
If you're black,
because a lot of their tactics would go out the window. They can't call her sexist. They can't call her racist, and they can't really touch Dan Crenshaw either because he's a veteran and he has an eye patch. So
but it's the double standards among the left. They rag on Candace all day because she's conservative.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
Well, I'm just saying their usual tactics of calling people sexist, racist, homophobic, and stuff wouldn't land with Candace Owens and Dan Crenshaw.
Well, that's kind of why I identify as non-binary because they can no longer accuse me of being homophobic or sexist or transphobic.
Mhm.
Yeah, it really depends on who you're dealing with, right? And if you're dealing with someone who's just going through the motions, or actually one of their language ninjas.
Mhm. So, I was also wondering, because a big thing that goes on with Christians in modern America is a big objection that many leftists have is a Christian stance on homosexuality and gay marriage. Now, you're actually more tolerant, I would say, than I've seen many Christians when it comes to that sort of topic. Um, do you think that there's a problem in America where perhaps many Christians are too harsh on the homosexual community? And do you think that sort of relationship can be repaired?
Oh, well, I guess it varies, right? So some folks like James White, or some like independent fundamentalist Baptist preachers. Um,
Like Stephen Anderson?
I'm not familiar with him specifically, but
I
probably.
wouldn't, I wouldn't compare him to. Actually, they're both not good, but Anderson's terrible. But another prominent one who's actually good is Michael Brown.
Yeah, so basically the society that I want to live in is one where everyone has a chance to live their life and to repent, but we also sort of keep out of the social contagion stuff. So to put it in real concrete terms, I don't think that there should be sodomy laws, but I think that like gay pride parades should be banned. Um,
Yeah, they're
eh,
just totally unnecessary.
yeah, exactly. And I don't think that it should be part of like public curriculum. But as long as folks are not, uh, living, and this is sort of a weird way to put it, living a relatively conservative lifestyle, their sexual proclivities doesn't really matter to society. Um, and I don't like gay marriage because marriage is this ontological thing between a man and a woman. But I'd be happy to make it easier for people to adopt each other as next of kin, right? And if you're a homosexual couple, you can do that to each other, right? Or if you're not, I mean, maybe you're like heterosexual life partners, right? And being able to adopt each other as next of kin is fine. Um, and so that's sort of my perspective on it, is that my my issue is the cultural lionization of it, not necessarily mere tolerance of it by society.
Or I think of a better idea would be to divide the country into three, like have the right have their own half of the country, have the left the other half of it, and then have the centrists have the third of it, and see which one ruins their society and which one prospers.
Not a bad idea. My favorite
Yeah,
dream. Go ahead.
I'm a pro secessionist for that reason. I mean, to me, the difference. I mean, every country is going to have its differences. I mean, in every state, but I think at this point we're so deeply divided, and that it's not like we have stupid disagreements. Like let's say for example, we want like one, we disagree on how high the taxes should be, like something silly like that. I mean, if that were our only differences with each other, that would be mild disagreements. But you have complete ontological disagreements on just about everything from moral issues like abortion, uh, you know, the giving kids that identify as trans, hormone blockers and stuff like that. Um, you basically just have two sides that just ontologically are just beyond, like they're not even on the same plane. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like the left and the right live in two completely different realities.
yeah, and the issue often is that we're getting people dominated by these pseudo realities, right? Um,
Yeah, and it's always the loud voices on both sides that are getting the most attention, and it seems like one or the other is the option. Like centrists rarely ever have their voices heard.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I've always said, you know, I've always said I'm so freaking tired of hearing about radical leftists and radical right wingers, you know, shooting up schools and whatever. When am I ever going to hear about a radical centrist, you know, gunning people down?
There aren't any.
I mean, I wonder how the hell that would work. What, you see a guy that runs into a building and says, "Why can't we all get along?" while mowing people down?
Well, I apologize. I have to sign off pretty quick here.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
We're
Um,
almost done anyway.
all right. Tell the dear audience where they can find you.
sure. I'm on twitter.com under Stratelates. And you can find me there tweeting almost every day on philosophy and politics and occasionally anime. So,
All right. With this abruptly ended stream, what do you want to say, Brass?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it was nice having you on, Commander Andrew Stratelates. It was very fun. Perhaps we can do this again sometime.
sounds good. And thank you all for listening in, and God bless.
You as well.
Good tight.
All right. Signing off.